Oh, I had to do that too. It doesn't really take too long, so. I'm in, my name is showing up on the screen, so I guess.
Good evening. Can people hear me? Good evening. Mary, can you hear me? Good evening. Can you hear me now? Good evening, Chris. Can you hear me? Aaron?
Good evening.
Hello, Eric.
All right. New microphone. I was wondering if it worked. Always a challenge. Good evening, Mary. Chris is apparently being engulfed by black ants or moths or something. Hello, Susan.
Hey. Hello, hello.
Hello, John. Are you related to one of the cases?
Good evening. I think I had my speaker adjusted a little low.
All right. Can you hear me now, Chris?
I can hear you fine. The video is going to bounce around a bit because our family cat's decided she wants to help.
Okay. All right. John is here. Hello, John.
Hello.
John Hall. And we are waiting on Kyle and Jacob and Stephanie for the panel.
Eric.
Yes, sir.
The attorney for the subdivision is James Cottrell. So if you see
Okay.
James Cottrell name,
He's in the attendees.
that's why he's here.
Yeah.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah.
He's attending. And
Okay. And John Dwyer, he's reconnecting the auto. What is John Dwyer's role?
John Dwyer is with the emergency management. And
Okay. Very good. Yeah.
And okay.
just to let you know,
Thank you, Susan.
Jacobs, he sent a text saying that he hadn't got a link to tonight's meeting. I sent him mine, so I assume that will work for him to get in, but he said he hadn't got one as of, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes ago. Just letting you know.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. Who is our IT professional tonight?
Will is the IT
Okay,
professional.
Will, if you see Jacob Paul come in as an attendee then by accident, or if you see him trying to get in, please do let him in.
I think if you see him try to get in with Aaron's login, it will come up as another Aaron Esri. So you'll probably be wanting to watch for a second Aaron Esri on that one.
Oh,
There he
he's
is.
up as Jacob. There he is.
Yeah.
Hello, Jacob. Welcome. Okay, so we're waiting for two more. We still have a minute or so to go. Susan is testing her screen sharing. Okay, it is working, Susan. I know that was it's always a worry. Hi, Stephanie.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
We're waiting for Kyle, which is, we'll speak upon that young man about time, but we do have 30 or 40 seconds left according to the wizards at Verizon. So I don't know if that's the official timepiece. And there's Kyle. Right on time. Hello, Kyle. All right, and we are recording, which is good. So it looks like we can begin. It is 6:31 my time. I call the meeting to order and would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Esri,
Present.
Furtado,
Present.
King,
Here.
Patterson,
Here.
Paul,
Here.
Store,
Present.
Thorsland.
Here, and I'd like to welcome our new members tonight, Mary King and Jacob Paul and Chris Dorr to the panel. And I also see that another Aaron Esri arrived that looked a lot like one of our other board members.
I think that might be Stan. He also,
It's me, guys. I'm just listening, and Aaron just sent me the link. I was going to listen in tonight for a change. Hi,
All right.
everybody.
So you're
How are
not,
you?
you're
Oh.
not Aaron's evil twin?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and-
I was Leah Taylor at facilities this week, so
yeah. I'm not sure Aaron's mom and dad would accept me as a twin, so
Okay, well, moving
if I
on.
need to
Welcome.
be switched somewhere else, fine.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda and addendum for tonight.
I'd like to make a motion to strike item 10, letter B from the agenda.
Okay. Does anyone want to second that?
I'll second it, Aaron Esri.
Okay. All right, we have a motion to amend the agenda by taking off 10B, which is the status of health department review. This is a discussion only item, by the way. This isn't anything that we're voting on. So just to be clear, if you take it off of it, we can't really talk about it, but there's no action item associated with that. Mr. Paul, if you want to maybe change your mind on removing it from the agenda.
I am aware.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, a vote of yes would modify the agenda and remove that from it. A vote of no would keep the agenda as is. So would the clerk call the roll? We're voting on.
Eric, point of order just for process.
Yeah.
We need to first and second the agenda, and then in discussion is when the amendment would go in, and then we would need to discuss the amendment.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's approve the agenda. I need a first and a second for that.
First, or so moved.
Moved by Kyle and a second. Second
Second.
by Mary. Okay, let's do the roll call vote for the.
No,
Oh, now
discuss-
we'll do the discussion of that, and Jacob's already made
Okay.
that. And we have a first, a motion from Jacob and a second from Aaron for that item. And now let's take a vote on that. Again, that is removing
discussion.
item. Oh, is there any discussion? Besides what I already mentioned, this is a discussion only item.
This is Chris. I'd like to hear Mr. Paul explain why he'd like this removed.
Yeah, just because I just think that we have a whole status of a health department, and those people are working really, really hard right now. And there's a backup, and then I think to throw something extra on their plate right now is a whole lot for something that's what our job is here. If it came up as an issue, if our job is to issue the entertainment license, that that's where we can help relieve some of that burden to public health, opposed to now they're right now running 45-60-day lead times on inspections, not to mention keeping up with people who are sick and feeding people, to add to more work without then the idea of increasing their budget I don't know if that's something we would do in this being a new member, but it seems like to add more work to their plate seems like a lot to do right now.
Well, as a matter of information, what I did learn that we intend to discuss later on is that the health department already is obligated to sign off on liquor licenses for most of the establishments that also have a recreation license. So that was one point that we were going to bring up later. Mr. Hall can explain it more later, should we discuss it later. But they already have a role that ties in to the establishments that also request the recreation and entertainment license. So they already have something that they have to do. And I think maybe the idea was to combine that with a checkoff on the recreation entertainment. So we know that that part is done for us. They go through a different part of the department. We don't see it, but it does happen.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this before we take a vote? All right, seeing none. Mary, could you call the roll on modifying the agenda?
Okay. Esri,
Yes.
Furtado,
No.
King,
No.
Patterson,
No,
Paul,
Yes.
Store,
No.
Thorsland.
No. Okay, that motion fails. So we're now back to the agenda as it is written. Is there any discussion on that before we move forward with that vote? All right, seeing none, Mary, would you call the roll for approval of the agenda?
Esri,
Yes.
Furtado,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Patterson,
yes,
Paul,
Yes.
Store,
Yes.
Thorsland.
Yes. Okay, the agenda has been approved. Item 4, approval of minutes from November 5th. I realize that some members were not here for that meeting because they weren't yet members.
So moved. Aaron Essery.
Thank you, Aaron, for the motion.
second,
Second from Kyle Patterson. Is there any additions or corrections that people have before we take the vote? Seeing none, Mary, go ahead and call the roll.
Esri,
Yes.
Furtado,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Patterson,
yes,
Paul,
Yes.
Store,
Yes.
Thorsland.
Yes. All right, thank you very much for that. Item 5, public participation. We have 2 people in attendees. If they could, can I allow them to talk? It looks like I can. And is Mr. Cottrell or Mr. Breen here to participate in public participation? If so, go ahead and speak up now. Mr. Cottrell.
I think you'll have to unmute yourself, Mr. Cottrell, if you're wanting to speak on your end as well as being allowed to speak.
Yeah,
Okay, can you hear me now?
yes, we can.
Okay, sorry. I'm relatively new at this.
Yeah,
I'm
if you
here
could
just
state
to,
your name and your reasons
Okay.
first.
Jim Cottrell, Cottrell. I'm here to basically answer any questions that you might have with regards to the Bullington minor subdivision matter.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Do you have anything you want to add at this time?
I do not know.
Okay. Mr. Breen, if you could unmute and let us know what brings you here tonight.
This is Tim Breen. I'm actually with the IT department. I'm just here to help get things going with Will in the back room.
Oh, okay. Well, nice to meet you virtually. All right, thank you very much. If you folks wouldn't mind muting at least, I don't know that we're going to slide them out, but please mute until perhaps Mr. Cottrell, we have questions for you. All right, anyone else?
Eric, you should be
Yes.
able to take their talking privilege. Just say you should be able, I think, to take their talking privileges away and then give them back to them later on, just stating.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
That's kind of the host, I guess you could say. If you
Yeah,
figure
they're both muted now, and
I mean,
I have them.
I'm not
asked.
worried about it, but just stating the fact.
Yep, thank you, Aaron. Moving on to communications, is there any communications from board members to the rest of the board or from staff?
Hi.
Kyle, that's it? All right, well, once again, welcome all the new folks. This is Kyle, and he's been a member of Eluc for a while, and he wants to say hello. Last chance for communications. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move along to new business, 7A, the Champaign County Solid Waste Management Information Series. And I'm going to give the floor to Susan Monty.
Okay, so welcome to new and returning Eluc members. You already may be aware that Champaign County updates a solid waste management plan every 5 years, and that the county partners with municipalities to hold e-waste collections for residents and now annual IEPA-sponsored one-day HHW collections. So the purpose of this information series is to provide you with a better understanding of what solid waste management and planning has occurred at the county and the extent to which Champaign County presently is involved in solid waste management. So why now? I think this is a great opportunity to share some information with Eluc. My hope is that during 2021, work can take place to complete a draft of the next 5-year update to the Champaign County Solid Waste Management Plan. And so this review will likely include some various improvements to be proposed, and this kind of information will help you, and your input is valuable during that process and before. Also, with the new legislative session in Illinois, there are expectations that new laws will be sponsored for review that can significantly impact solid waste management and planning here in East Central Illinois and statewide. So having a clear understanding of the county authority and limitations with regard to solid waste management planning will allow us to better understand and potentially support relevant bills. So just a bit about my work and involvement. In 2006, the county board passed a resolution designating the planner at the Regional Planning Commission. My position at the time as recycling coordinator for Champaign County to serve in that capacity, and also to assume the tasks to maintain and update the Champaign County Solid Waste Management Plan. So the portion of my staff time devoted to this work is approximately presently 1/3 time to half time. It has increased over the past year. So I've had an opportunity to learn a fair amount about solid waste management planning here in Champaign County and in the broader context of Illinois, and I'm looking forward to sharing that information. So this is a lot of information to roll out, and so that's why it's divided into 5 portions. And my presentation is intended to be brief. And for this first presentation, I will mostly focus on background and history. So just a bit of context, in the early 1980s, there were hundreds of small dumps and municipal landfills throughout Illinois and few recycling opportunities. And landfill capacity was a great concern, and the siting of new landfills met with resistance, no surprise. Illinois had no coordinated state-level approach to manage solid waste. So this was the context in 1980. When these 3 laws, 3 sets of laws were passed and enacted, So even before these laws, in the mid 80s, an early law not shown here was called the Local Solid Waste Disposal Act. And that allowed for, but did not require, a unit of local government to prepare a solid waste plan regarding disposal of solid waste generated within its own jurisdiction. So that was not a requirement. It was just a way to allow for that to happen. So back to these laws, Solid Waste Management Act passed in 1986. This established a waste management hierarchy policy in Illinois, which we'll talk about briefly in a moment. It created a funding source for county solid waste planning, designating the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity at the IEPA to be responsible. It specified a procurement policy that applied to some Illinois agencies under some circumstances. It required state-supported colleges and universities to develop and implement a waste reduction plan. And so it also required IEPA to start collecting regional data about life expectancy and disposal capacity of Illinois landfills. So next, the Solid Waste Planning and Recycling Act, that is passed in 1988, was a requirement that all Illinois counties, as well as the city of Chicago, develop a comprehensive solid waste management plan by 1995. So it also established IEPA as the reviewing agency, and it set requirements for each of the county waste management plans that they be updated and reviewed every 5 years, and that each plan include provisions to implement a recycling program designed to recycle 25% of municipal waste generated within its jurisdiction. So this was essentially a mandate. It was partially funded at the time, with access to grants that would cover approximately 70% of the costs to counties. Also enacted at that time were provisions in the Illinois Environmental Protection Act, and it established a series of fees on Illinois landfills, and that would fund and support the solid waste management programs at the state. It authorized IEPA to delegate to certain well-staffed counties certain duties to inspect landfills. It also authorized IEPA to conduct household hazardous waste collections and disposal programs statewide. And it was the authority to impose a surcharge on tipping fees at landfills, and that revenue also supported funding of state programs. So let's see here. With the passage of these pieces of legislation, counties were required then to develop waste management plans. And the second one, CIPRA, it was called, encouraged counties and municipalities to jointly work on a regional basis. So I wanted to mention just another piece of story about the Intergovernmental Solid Waste Disposal Agency here, commonly referred to as ISWDA. Okay, so in 1986, even prior to passage of the CIPRA Act in 1988, Champaign County, the city of Champaign, and the city of Urbana formed what was then called an interjurisdictional agency. And that was the ISWDA, the Intergovernmental Solid Waste Disposal Agency, in 1986. So the purpose was to together implement solid waste planning and programs, and oversee the development of the Champaign County Solid Waste Management Plan, which was developed and adopted subsequently by Champaign County in 1991. So the plan developed by ISWDA included two highly controversial components. One was to locate a landfill and transfer station facility within Champaign County. The other was to control and restrict where waste haulers could take their materials, because their materials were integral as a means to pay for the operation of the landfill and transfer station. So local municipalities and other groups were swayed by, wait, I wanted to talk about, oh, I lost my place here, I'm sorry. All of the approximately 20 local waste haulers formed, oh, here it is. The independent waste haulers formed a waste haulers association and objected to the controls being proposed. They lobbied for privatization of solid waste management services to occur within the cities of Champaign and Urbana, to continue to occur. So they swayed local municipalities, and some of the nonprofit organizations also were opposed to the controls and the impacts to local waste haulers. As it turns out, in the spring of 1992, the city of Champaign withdrew from the ISWDA, and ultimately ISWDA was officially dissolved in 1997. So it was a short-lived organization, 1986 to 1997. And so the plan that was developed by the ISWDA has been modified in 5-year increments. And we will talk more about that in future sessions, about the 46 recommendations in that plan, only a few of which have survived. I'm going to move on to more interesting stuff. So what is municipal solid waste? Essentially by now, or maybe I should have started by clarifying, solid waste is garbage, general household and commercial waste. A very broad definition that is like pages long in the legislation. So essentially it's trash, and as defined here, it could come from residents, commercial, industrial sources. And it also includes construction and demolition debris. So the first Solid Waste Management Act includes the policy for Illinois about the hierarchy of how solid waste is managed. And that's shown here in order of preference: to reduce at the source material waste, and then to recycle and reuse materials. Next, energy recovery from combustion. Next, just incineration with no energy recovery. And then finally, putting the stuff in the landfill. So that essentially is an overview of the hierarchy of waste management in Illinois. It's been looked at about 5 years ago, and proposals were made to change it, but still those changes have not occurred. So material management is a newer term that encompasses a broader perspective and a wider approach to handling, managing materials based on a cradle to grave kind of perception. You'll still see all of these three terms used interchangeably, and material management is what you see more and more with regard to management of solid waste. So I wanted, toward the end of this presentation, which is happening right now, to introduce you and talk briefly about the Illinois Commodity Waste Generation Study and update, which I find to be very interesting and give you a great idea of some of the scope of what we're dealing with here in Illinois. And if you look closely at this document, you can even get county-specific estimates. So this is a fascinating document. The Illinois Recycling Association commissioned a study like this first in 2008, and then updated it later in 2014. And so we have a 5-year data collection. And so this study effectively manages and looks at types and quantities of materials generated and potentially recoverable. So this is very valuable data, which really feeds into policy and program design, both benefiting the public sector and private sector. So 10 materials divided by class is what this study focuses on. These are the material classes, and each of these classes is divided into further individual materials categories. So the interesting one that I like to point out is composition of landfill municipal solid waste by material class. And you can see what is in our landfills as of 2014, as estimated to be there. Organics, 27.8%. And that's just amazing. Paper and construction and demolition debris. And there's other household hazardous waste is 0.5, which is a small percentage, but that is a very impactful and toxic and dangerous material to be in any kind of context. So I just wanted to point that out. Plastics is also a pretty large proportion. So maybe you've had a chance to look at this, but I compared the 2008 or 2009 data set with the 2015, and you can see organics is increasing as a component of landfills. Construction and debris, demolition debris is coming down, so it's being accommodated better is the implication there. And so yeah, just across the board, you can see how things have spanned out over 5 years. And I'll end here with just a snapshot of the individual materials, the top 10 individual material categories in a landfill. And food scraps and is at 17.5%. So all of these materials here represent the top 50% of materials in a landfill. And so this is how it breaks out. Uncoated, that's corrugated cardboard. That's what that means. And yeah, you can see the breakout of what's going on in a landfill as estimated by this consulting firm. So yeah, this represents the first part of the information series, and I do encourage each of you to contact me with any questions or concerns or opinions you have about this information and what you're hearing. It will be very valuable to me as we continue on during 2021. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And we have, you will join us for the next 4 meetings after this, I assume, and give us the parts. So what was interesting to look at in there was the beverage containers, which everyone talks about reducing, was such a small part of what's actually in the landfill at the moment, which was surprising information for me. And construction debris was such a high amount, which I didn't imagine at first. But I guess that's easy to imagine if you think about the amount of construction that goes on in our area. So any questions for Susan while from that are short and brief, or as Susan recommends, you can also reach her. Stephanie?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So as we go through the process of updating our plan, will there be are there any public meetings, or is it mostly through this committee, or is there like a public input kind of meeting?
That's an excellent question. Ideally, there will be a public component to that update process. I about a year ago started that process, but was diverted to another couple of projects. But I have a few people that represent the waste hauling industry that are interested in participating on a task force, and we can involve Eluc as well during that process.
Great. The other thing I wanted to mention is one of the goals that I've had a long time from the board is that we get more active in terms of trying to direct state policy. I think that we mostly just sort of receive state policy, and we don't really have a committee that engages in state policy in any meaningful way. And Eluc to me seems like a natural fit because there is so much I mean, we have like instances with, Chris, being on different water safety type of things. But I think this would be really interesting as you said, that there might be some of this that goes forward in the state legislature this year, that there might be some rule changes that maybe we could discuss those a little bit in this committee, and maybe even like submit witness slips or, something real wild and crazy like that, and actually try to like engage in state policy instead of just being like, oh, well, that happened. And I think we're fortunate in that on both sides of the aisle, our local state representatives are actually pretty engaged in environmental issues. So I just wanted to bring that up. Like maybe that could become more something that this committee does.
I could just say 3 words as a foreshadowing. of that new legislation. Paint, carpets, and pharmaceuticals is coming
Uh-huh.
down the pike.
All right, any other questions of short nature for Susan tonight?
This is Chris, and I'll just chime in real quick to acknowledge that Susan Monte's large role in helping to establish the Champaign County Environmental Stewards, who were among those to help organize some of the collection events that we've had here. And this is a new nonprofit that we hope will have aspirations of trying to have year-round or more frequent household hazardous waste and electronic collection, perhaps other sorts of things that they can do as time and resources come their way. Thank you. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Chris. And thank you again, Susan, for that. And we will see you again at the next meeting with part 2. All right, if we're ready, we can move along to B. This is the notice of non-compliance with Illinois noxious weed law, which sounds terrible. And I think that we'll let John explain how terrible this is for the new members and what we do about this more often than we care to mention.
Yeah, so the state has a noxious weed law that that law says every county is supposed to every year appoint a weed commissioner who surveys all the problem noxious weeds in the county and prepares a plan for control of them. And if you think about the 1,000 square miles of Champaign County, identifying all the noxious weeds and preparing a plan every year, that would be a huge effort. We've never done it. What we do is people call our office with complaints. We follow up on those complaints. I'm happy to say that almost every landowner I've ever contacted about noxious weeds takes the necessary action without Champaign County having to do anything else. I don't want you to think that's a great number of the landowners with noxious weeds, because it isn't. We don't get complaints very often. You can drive through the countryside any day of the week and see noxious weeds in great profusion. That's not a good thing. On the other hand, no one ever complains, but we do get these annual notices. I only know of one county in the state that has never gotten one of these notices. I'm sorry to say the name of that county escapes me right now, but suffice to say that 101 counties in the state of Illinois get these notices every year. I'm not aware of the county actually taking any legal action. It's a pretty minor legal action. So I don't think this is a big deal. I want you to know that we do respond when we get complaints, and luckily we don't get that many complaints in any given year. That's all I have.
All right, Chris has got his hand up, so I assume he has a question for you.
Yes, just to alert the members of the committee, and I'm sure you're probably aware of this, John, the Lincoln Heritage Resource Conservation and Development Organization, of which Champaign County is a member, has a program of noxious weeds or getting rid of alien species of weeds. And they receive no funding from the federal government or the state government, but basically obtain funding through doing supervising controlled burns, which is largely help. There's a lot of volunteer support from that, from different organizations, especially conservation organizations like Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, white-tailed deer, and so forth. I'll close with saying that they do a certain amount of education, and when invited, have a good program to talk about this with school kids, and also they talk about pollinators, how having planting plants. I don't want to call them weeds, but plants that are friendly to pollinators. So while we may be out of compliance, we do participate in a program with 5 other counties. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Storr. And if you ever get a chance to go to one of these burnings, it's actually a lot of fun. And you will smell when you're done, but you'll smell good. All right. Thank you, John, for notifying us of our non-compliance. And we'll talk about this again next year. Moving on to item 8, new business items to be approved by the committee. A1 or AI is the Hudson Farm Wedding Event LLC at 1341 County Road 1800 East Urbana. And this is before us, John, I believe, because it didn't reach us in time to go through the normal route, and we need to do it here, right?
Well, it didn't get here in time to be included on the December county board.
Yeah.
And so, we're 7 days into the new year, but they did get their application in like in mid-December. So I don't think that's a real big issue. I don't even know how much they're doing right now. They don't
Okay,
do a
Aaron?
lot of events in the winter.
Yeah, Aaron, you have your hand raised?
Yes, Eric, I was going to make the motion to approve this. And also, if there's no objection from anybody else on the committee, I would make it a omnibus along with A2, the Alto Vineyards at 4210 North Duncan Road, Champaign, for December 1st, 2021 through, or January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021, since they're both R&D licenses. It would just be one less roll call. If someone wants to split them out, we'll do them separate, but I'm open, willing for a omnibus for the 2 of them.
Yeah, as am I. Mr. Stewart?
I'd like to second Aaron Esri's motion to do an omnibus for this.
All right, very good. With that, in agreement, is there any discussion about either one of these outside of moving on to the vote? I think these are all straightforward and all the information is in the packet. So, Aaron, your hand's still up. Did you have something to add or just still up?
No, sorry, forgot to lower it.
Because our group is not so big, I think we can use the blue hand if we need to, but we can also just do this. And I think it works fairly well. And when it doesn't, just yell. All right, seeing no further discussion, let's go ahead and take the roll on A1 and 2 under section 8. Mary?
Okay. Esri,
Yes.
Furtado,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Paul,
Mr. Paul?
Paul,
You're muted.
Yes, sorry about
Thank
that.
you. That's okay.
Storr,
Yes.
Thorsland.
Yes. All right, those both passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to 9. This is the subdivision that Mr. Cottrell is here for. 9A subdivision case 204-20, Bullington subdivision, final plat approval of a 2-lot minor subdivision located in the northeast quarter of the southeast quarter of section 29 of T21 North, R14 West of the second principal meridian in Compromise Township and commonly known as the House, located at 2549 County Road 2700E, Penfield. I'm misreading those, John, from my old ZBA days. John, do you have anything you want to add to this?
I would just point out that long-term members of the committee notice that every time a minor subdivision comes up, which minor subdivisions are all we see anymore, the waivers for PERC data and certification of the lot characteristics are common waivers. That doesn't mean they're trying to skirt the regulations. The subdivision has been reviewed by the health department, and the health department has signed off on the lots and the soil characteristics. So the waivers are more an indication of how out of date our subdivision regulations are. Again, this is a 2-lot subdivision, which will presumably in the future add one more dwelling. There's already a dwelling on, I think it's lot 2, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, there's a dwelling on lot 2. The subdivision is to create an additional lot that will presumably get a house at some point in the future. The relevant highway jurisdiction is our own county engineer. He signed off on the plat. These lots exceed any minimum requirement in the ordinance. And our review of the minimum subdivision standards, in our staff view, it complies with all of the minimum subdivision standards. In the notes that went out, you know, that any recommendation for approval should also include the 2 waivers. If you agree with our findings, we've tried to document that the waivers are reasonable. And so I hope you can find this acceptable.
Wait, are there any questions for John or for Mr. Cottrell, who's here on behalf of the subdivision as well? Aaron?
Yeah,
I think
thanks,
Aaron
Eric.
was ahead of you, Chris.
I move to approve the subdivision.
Okay, Chris, did you have some question?
Yes, thank you. I came here originally prepared to contest some of this, but after some discussion with Ms. Susan Bergstrom from the county and also Mr. Jeff Blackford from Public Health, they more or less persuaded me that some of my concerns were though they understood my concerns, which is the very poor drainage and high water table, especially seasonal high water table. But they said that that this could be mitigated by some of the methods that are used, and I'll not grind away much more than that, other than to say that this is these are poorly drained, somewhat poorly drained soils, and I wouldn't expect that a septic tank lateral field would work throughout the year. It will have some seasonal problems, and I'm sorry to say very familiar with what happens with a septic tank lateral field that doesn't work well. With that, I yield the remainder of my time back to the chair.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Is there a second for Aaron's motion?
Second.
Second from Kyle. Is there any further discussion or concern on this before we take the vote? Once, twice. Okay, seeing and hearing none. Mary, you would take the roll.
Esri,
Yes.
Furtado,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Store,
Yes.
Thorsland.
Yes. All right, that motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to B, the request to adopt the Champaign County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan update of 2020. And I believe that we have John Dwyer here to talk about this. John, if you want to explain to us what this is, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time this evening. Appreciate what everyone does for the county. The hazardous mitigation plan it's time for an update. It's something we look at every so often. Some of the threats we have, of course, severe weather. Believe it or not, even before COVID, we had pandemic on there as well. So it's a good plan as far as where we're going and what steps we can do to try to prevent as much loss of life, limb, and property as we can within the means that we have available to us. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Whether it's promoting community education about having multiple ways to get notified of severe weather, whether it's working with Susan. Chris mentioned the Environmental Stewards Committee. I'm on that committee, not through my work, but as a concerned citizen, but it came up through some of the issues with working with local fire departments and, people having chemicals at home and what do they do with them. They don't want to end up in a storm drain. But that's one of the things. We do have a lot of chemicals that go through the county, whether it's on the rail, on the roads, and even underground. So it's an all-encompassing plan. There's always work to be done. It's just kind of tough right now with COVID, trying to hold committee meetings and things like that, but we still are working through it. Susan's done a great job scheduling meetings. It's been adopted by multiple villages and jurisdictions across the county. We have great support from the University of Illinois as well as Parkland College. So this is kind of a formality.
Thank you,
Susan, you have
John.
anything to add? Did I miss something?
Really just wanted to point out that we've updated all of the risk assessments, and we've received input from new advisory committee people, including the current new state climatologist. Even John Hall was on our advisory group this time. And yeah, it's all updated information. It's approximately 400 pages of information that will be posted and eventually printed. A couple of copies available to each of the municipalities in the county and all of the participants. So yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for your work. And John for being on the advisory committee.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, any other questions for John or Susan about this? Wave your hand, raise your blue hand, whatever, speak up. Seeing none, would Mary go ahead and call the roll on item B?
Need a motion first.
Yeah, Eric,
Oh,
there
that's
wasn't a
right, we
motion
didn't get
on
a
that.
motion. Sorry, I'd entertain a motion for item B, adopting the Champaign County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan.
So moved.
Moved by Mary. Second.
A second.
Thank you, Jacob. Motion by Mary King, second by Jacob Paul. Mary Ward, please call the roll.
Okay. Esri,
Yes.
Furtado,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Store,
Yes.
Thorsland.
Yes. All right, that motion passes unanimously as well. Thank you very much. Moving on to other business. John, we have monthly reports. Anything you want to add to that?
I don't have much to add except to point out that October was actually a a busy month. We've had a pretty busy year this year as far as permits go. As far as zoning cases go, it's greatly reduced from last year. Thank goodness. Last year was extremely busy. So it looks like small by comparison, but again, last year was the biggest year we've had for a long time. So we really have had sort of a not too much less than a normal year, actually. Everything in a nutshell. We're actually busy.
All right, thank you, John. Any questions for John on the monthly report? Seeing none, moving on to B, status of Health Department review of recreation and entertainment licenses. And by way of background, I just want to say that I was asked by one of the members if we could maybe discuss this. If you turn to page 17 of the packet, this is probably best explained that way. This is just one of the 2 entertainment licenses we did tonight. What you'll see up towards the top is that the county clerk's office has to check off on the fee and the proper application. The sheriff's department signs off on these for police record and a credit check. And then planning and zoning checks off on the zoning and restrictions. And then it comes to us here at Eluc. One of the items we don't know, and given not just COVID times, but in general times, is we don't know if any of these establishments, which often have food involved or public health in any other way, have been reviewed or have had any incidents or have had any problems with the health department, the Board of Health, and whatever encompassing body that would oversee some of these activities. We don't see that. When I asked about this and asked about putting it on the agenda, Mr. Hall informed me what I said earlier in the meeting is that I believe you could not think of more than a few rec and entertainment licenses, John, that don't also have a liquor license involved. I think Curtis Orchard was one of the few.
That's the only one that comes to mind. I actually haven't searched since then, but it's the only one I recall that does not have a liquor license.
So, so the Board of Health is already involved in these in the capacity of checking off on the liquor license for these things. So the question is for the board, do we want to know about that? Do we want to know about any of the other items that the Board of Health might have a concern that we currently don't know about when we approve these things? And any input would be welcome at this point. Stephanie?
John, can you ballpark about how many of these do we do a year?
Well, I think approximately, say, 15.
Okay. So
Well, on the R&E licenses, it depends on the year. We have about 15 annual licenses. And then the smaller events that may come up, maybe individual events, there may be 5 of those in a typical year.
I understand the impetus for this, and I do think it would be beneficial in some ways to know. I mean, it's something I would be interested in knowing, but I do also think Jacob has a good point in that if we're going to put another burden on the health department and not give them any more resources to do that, I don't really know if that's a good idea. Because as Jacob said, I mean, they're already kind of at max capacity right now. And I know that sometimes we have a pretty tight turnaround on some of these things. And if Jacob, I know you mentioned what the wait time is right now for a health inspection. I don't know like how that would intersect. So I just wanted to, I appreciate the idea, and I'm not necessarily against the idea, but I do think we would need to work those things out before we just added another checkbox.
Chris had his hand up first, Jacob, and then we'll go to you. Chris?
Thank you. I I agree with Stephanie's concern. I think that that this is a reasonable thing, but as Eric pointed out, so many of these already have this oversight because of the liquor. And if the public health department, it should, I think that, it'd be interesting to see what they have to say about it, if this is going to further hinder them or be a further problem. But I know that they do have staff dedicated or supposedly assigned for this sort of task, do they not?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know that we have someone here that actually knows the actual answer to that tonight. Maybe John does, I'm not sure.
I assume they don't have staff that they can dedicate to R&E license inspections. Although for those R&E licenses that also get liquor licenses, you know, they're already inspecting for liquor licenses. So I'm sure they would not want to have to do redundant inspections or reviews. In fact, I've wondered if the county has ever considered a joint license for those that get both liquor and R&E. But I've also learned that making any change is always a tremendous undertaking. And so there's a lot of inertia to keep things the way they are. I understand that completely. So I assume they do not have staff for an additional review, even though they're already reviewing most of these. And in the case of Curtis Orchard, I think Curtis Orchard is already subject to health department review because of all the food products.
That was that occurred to me too, because I want, don't they
Hang on, Jacob.
have to have a safety check?
Yes, I think they do. They cook there, so I know they get
Yeah,
inspections.
Jacob, I think, has something to add to this part of the conversation. Maybe you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was going with Chris there, where if the health department already has the opportunity now to shut down facilities that are they deem a danger to the public on that case-to-case basis, adding another layer would then remove something different on then in the case of if we are thinking of just food, but then to think of this, the scope, we might have to expand this thing to then, if now this is a pandemic health checklist that's focused on gathering size and spaces, that to think that wouldn't have to be then unilateral on other people's industries who wouldn't be upset, would be a something else too, where it would start with this one, and then now we have to, now we're gonna ask public health now to do, contact tracing and checks for levels now across multiple industries and multiple committees now, where this could affect every member of every committee of the board then, to where health department now can check for safety. They already are enforcing restrictions on size guidelines to add an extra layer of work for them for stuff that they are doing, and then now add extra work now across multiple parts of their job. Seems like a lot if we're not willing to then really make a pace to give them all the resources that I don't think we have in a year where liquor sales are down anyway, and we're still fighting a regular pandemic. To now expand this across to everybody, to me seems like a whole lot of work that we need to see what we're really signing up for before we just, because we're environmental and land. There's a whole this is a bigger, I think, a bigger issue than that. Does that make sense?
Thanks, Jacob. I have a question for you, John. And you told me this, and I've slept since then, so I've forgotten. The liquor licenses go through the county executive office. Am I correct?
Yes, the county executive is the liquor commissioner now.
Okay, so I guess a question I would ask without any action behind it, unless it's not difficult, is there a way to add the fact to these R&E licenses when we see them that their liquor license has already been approved, or do they happen at the same time?
They do not happen at the same time. There's a 6-month difference between the liquor license comes up for review the 1st of June, and the R&E is the 1st of the year. And that's good because each time there's this, glut of 15 to 20 licenses that need to get reviewed. And so spacing it out that way makes a certain amount of sense.
So my question would be, what would be the difficulty in informing Eluc that they have a current liquor license when this comes through Eluc as an agenda item? Do you know that they have a current liquor license when it goes through the P&Z office for approval? Or do you check it?
I know when it goes through on June 1, when we review for the new licenses, and I'm happy to say that I'm not bothered if there is ever a problem with the liquor license. That's all handled by the liquor commissioner and the sheriff. But I'm happy to start checking with the liquor commissioner every time there's an R&E. I could report to the committee about whether the liquor license compliance is still acceptable or not. That wouldn't be a great amount of work.
Okay,
I don't think it's very common that we have a problem, but I have to say I really don't know.
Okay. So you think that this wouldn't be an undue burden on P&Z staff or for putting together the agenda for Eluc, that this was I don't want to ever say, dude, could we change the form? Because I realize that would take like 6 committee meetings to change the form. But at least, and Lord knows what it would look like when we get it back. But if that could be something that we could know.
Can I make a point? Real
Yeah,
quick?
go ahead, Stephanie.
So if one of these venues gets their liquor license yanked, they ain't gonna come back to us to ask for the venue to be open, because none of these folks are gonna have any business if they don't have a liquor license. So my guess would be is if their liquor license gets yanked, we're never even gonna see them, because like you're not having a country music concert or a wedding or whatever without beer. You know what I mean? Like that just isn't gonna happen. So I mean, I think we could ask John to do that, but I don't know. My guess is if it's real interesting to me that they're half a year apart. But my guess is if their liquor license gets pulled, then they'll just disappear off our list. Or, I guess maybe they'll just have some real dry events.
Yeah.
Teen dance party.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eric, this is Aaron.
Aaron, go ahead.
I was kind of thinking along the same lines as Stephanie. I guess knowing it doesn't hurt anything, but yeah, I was kind of thinking along the same lines too. If it gets pulled, I guess, okay, so they're 6 months off. So let's say we just did the which one did we do? We did the Hudson Farm wedding. Let's say that theirs got pulled in December. Okay, we would hear that it got pulled. Well, yeah, they're going to either be trying to go on without it, or as Stephanie said, correct it and get it reinstated as quick as they can. And if it happened to have got pulled a month after we approve it, well, again, they're still going to try and get it back as quick as they can, I would think. So to a degree, I don't like, I personally too don't really necessarily see the purpose of just knowing the state of their liquor license personally. Again, does it hurt that we know it or that it's put out there again on the agenda? No, because it's obviously public knowledge anyway, but it seems, and I can see how it wouldn't necessarily be a whole lot of work for planning and zoning, but I just kind of don't see the purpose of just knowing that it is or is not current. So that's my thoughts.
Thanks, Aaron. Kyle, you had your hand up briefly a while ago. Did you have something to add?
I was going to ask about, you wound up asking the question about what would it take to just get the current status? Yeah.
Well, I think Stephanie?
Can I also maybe make the argument that the work should flow the other way? that like Eluc should give the liquor czar, the executive, the list of things that we have permitted. And if any of them get yanked, they should tell us instead, because that would be rarer and less work. So instead of John having to check every time, I think it should be the opposite. If in the case that one of them that we've permitted for the year that are current gets pulled, the executive should inform Eluc. Like, I feel like that should go, that the work should be on the executive instead of on.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I agree with that. And again, when I brought this up as an agenda item, I did not know anything about the liquor license stuff, and I wanted to have a nice, healthy discussion tonight, and we have. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody's input. So with that, maybe in the future we can talk about getting the executive to keep us informed of not just this, but maybe other things too that are ELOC related, to keep the committee informed. But I think, Stephanie, you're absolutely correct. I think the river should flow towards us, and we shouldn't be having to paddle our way up it to find out information that we should already know. So, is there any other discussion on this? I think, as we say, we're going to let it lie so that we don't have the 65 committee meetings and all the other work that it takes. There's other things that we want to change that will burden John in the future, I'm sure. But this is maybe not the hill we want to die on. So, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody's input on that. So anything else on this? We'll move. There's no chair's report, except for maybe I would comment just briefly, and we'll bring this up in another meeting, John, but we talked about this PERC data and other things that are no longer relevant in our ordinance with the way mini subs are approved, these subdivisions. Perhaps the committee wants to work to begin the process of changing the ordinance so that we don't have to constantly introduce these waivers on these small subdivisions in the future. And I know that's a lot of work, but we'll have to balance endless waivers and the potential for complaints about waivers, and streamlining the ordinance. So, and that would be all I have. Designation of items to be placed on the consent agenda. Everything we voted on tonight was unanimous. That was 8A, 1 and 2, and 9A and B. Is there any of these that the committee feels shouldn't be on consent so that we can discuss?
The items
Aaron,
on 8 are approved by Eluc. They don't go.
Oh, that's right. They don't go to county board. Is there anything we don't want to put on the consent agenda? All right, well then we'll move those items to the consent agenda. So, and that's all I have for tonight. Does anyone have anything else? And again, welcome all the new folks. All right, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. I know I don't need a motion, but it's always nice to know who's in agreement. Hearing none, I guess we're here all night. Okay, do I get a second to Stephanie's motion?
Second.
All right, thank you, Jacob. Appreciated. Everyone have a wonderful night. Thank you very much all for coming, and the attendees who also played, and to IT for making it all run so smoothly. Good night, everybody. Thank you very much.
All right.
Night.